Hey everyone, I'm Dan from JazzComposersPresent.com, an online space where composers, musicians, and listeners come together to celebrate the music we love. I'm joined today by John Sturino, award-winning composer, arranger, drummer, percussionist, and bandleader based in New York City. John is here to show us how to make the most of orchestration with a limited-size ensemble.
Hi everybody, this is John Sturino, and I'm coming to you today to talk about making the most of your limited ensemble size from the perspective of orchestration. My band is called Blow Globe, and it's not quite a big band and not quite a small group. It sits somewhere kind of in the middle. You could maybe call it a jazz chamber ensemble. And the band originally featured 6 wind players and has expanded by 2 additional wind players. And we've got 4 woodwind chairs and 4 brass chairs. Something I deal with all the time in writing for this ensemble is trying to execute certain ideas that maybe you might think require a larger instrumentation or a larger ensemble, such as a big band or orchestra. And I try to condense those and effectively create the same feeling sonically within the smaller ensemble size. So the piece we're going to check out today is called Wisconsin, and you're going to hear the rhythm section enter with this 4-measure motif that keeps recurring throughout the piece, rhythmically and harmonically. And then we're going to hear an entrance from our main key melody players, which are going to be the tenor saxophone and trumpet. And there's also a second trumpet coloring the sound of the melody with a harmon mute. So if we take a look at the first page of the score, we've got the rhythm section, not quite in unison, but sharing the same rhythmic idea and in totality creating one larger harmonic idea between the guitar and piano voicings and the bass line. And then if we go to the next page of the score where the horns enter, you'll see that with the red annotation, that's going to be our main melody players for this section. And then the blue annotation is going to be actually our color guy. That's going to be the instrument that's helping shade the melody and to create something a little bit different than if we just had tenor saxophone and trumpet playing at the same time in unison. By adding this harmon mute trumpet, we're changing the character of the melody, and we're adding a very unique sound, blending it with what's already going on with trumpet 1 and the tenor saxophone. So these players play for 4 bars, and then there's a little bit of a suspended moment. And then we go right into, at measure 15, we've got a pickup with additional horns joining, which we're going to hear in a second. And if you just take a look at this before we listen to it, you can see, again, with the red annotations, I've got the key melody players or the people playing what I call the primary melody. And this time it's going to be the alto saxophone and trumpet 1. And tenor saxophone with the green annotation in measure 14 is going to actually break off playing the same rhythm, but playing in harmony with the 2 players in the red annotation. And then we've got trumpet 2, again, in harmon mute, and we've got the flute joining in at the top of the score there, both in the blue annotation. And these players are kind of latching on initially, rhythmically, to what's going on with the melody, the primary melody. What I'm trying to accomplish here with their parts specifically is just thickening the sense of the melody tonally and texturally. And then, of course, we have, with the green annotations in measure 15, we've got the bari sax, French horn, and trombone finally joining in, and they're all in unison here. So one thing I like to do when I'm writing for this ensemble or a big band or orchestra is to take disparate instruments, one of each, and to blend them together. And usually you need to have 3 instruments playing at the same time to create a truly blended sound. So you'll hear that in measure 15 going into 16 with the bari sax, the French horn, and the trombone. If you only had two of each of these horns, if you only had, say, bari sax and French horn, or you only had trombone and bari sax together, your ear still would be able to detect pretty quickly that it's two horns going on, and you could probably, if you listened closely enough, pick out which horns they are. But in this case, when we add that third horn in to a unison melody, it thickens it in a way that makes it a little harder to discern specifically which instrument is playing that line or which instruments are playing that line. And while we're looking at this page, we can take a look at measure 18. You see the orange box is a moment where suddenly there is, again, calling back to about 4 or 5 measures before, there's suddenly this suspended moment texturally where everything lightens up just for a brief period, almost like a window cracking open and light coming through for a brief period. What I've done here is I've omitted the bari sax in the orange box in measure 18. So bari sax is out. And then if you look below in measure 18, in the yellow box, I've put the trombone very high in the register, and I have them playing in stand so that it creates a high muted effect on the trombone. That's kind of a register for the trombone that's more challenging to play at mezzo piano, which is the dynamic marking I have there. So putting them in stand really helps create that sense of air in that brief moment. And if you look at measure 19, the last measure on this page, in the orange annotation right next to that orange box there, you'll see the bari sax coming back in at a forte dynamic, and they're in unison with the left-hand piano, guitar, and bass. If we scroll ahead to the next page, you'll see that this continues only for the first beat of measure 20. And then I've got immediately after that, I've got the bari sax joining back in with alto sax, French horn, trombone, which you see are all blue annotations, but you can see that the bari sax is not joining in on that phrase with the other horns until the of one. That's another way that you can use individual players. It's almost like seamlessly tapering, having one instrument join another musical idea just for a brief second. You want to taper it in a way that it's not obvious when they disappear. So by having that bari sax play that first G on beat 1 of measure 20, I'm kind of obfuscating the fact that they're going to be leaving on the of 1 and joining in with the rest of the horns. And because the rhythm section is playing that of 1 so strongly, your ear doesn't readily detect that the bari has left that line with the guitar, left-hand piano, and bass. We can see here in measure 20, we've got the primary melody players annotated in red, and I've got the flute now up an octave. Again, just one flute player, but jumping them up the octave from the other horns is going to bring out the melody in a completely different way than if I had written the flute in unison with the other horns, which is another effective way you can take advantage of that fact and create a different effect sonically by having the melody in octaves instead of in unison. And then finally at letter B, which is measure 24, there's a shift in what the rhythm section is playing, and it becomes a little bit more harmonically dense, and the rhythm's changing a little bit. So what I did at letter B, which is the first time this chorus happens in this piece, is I just presented the new melody or chorus melody in unison with the flute, alto sax, and tenor saxophones. And I did this because I didn't want it to get too cloudy too fast. And you'll see that. And then finally at letter B, we have the rhythm section changing what's happening rhythmically and harmonically, especially. It gets a little bit more dense harmonically than what we've heard up to this point. And so what I wanted to do was just have the melody or the chorus melody, the new melody, presented just as it is with no additional accompaniment from the rest of the wind players. So what I did is put it just in the woodwinds with flute and alto actually in unison, and then tenor sax an octave lower. It just opens up a little bit differently where it allows the listener to just take in this new melody. And of course, later on in this chart, I present this same chorus melody again with accompaniment from the other 5 horn players that are resting during this period. But I kind of just felt like it needed to breathe a little bit. And so going from a texture where you've got melody and accompaniment and you're voicing it out between all the horns, and then finally at B, just going to melody and rhythm section, that can be its own orchestration technique that can be super effective, where going from something that's very dense to very simple or straightforward, orchestrationally speaking, can be highly effective. So let's take a listen to this second passage now. So those are just a few of the ways that I'm trying to take advantage of this limited ensemble size in my band Blow Globe, trying to maximize all of the different sonorities and textures I can, trying to take advantage of each instrument's register and how the tone color changes depending on what register that instrument is playing in at that given moment, and having seamless tapers between different musical ideas. If I'm having one horn switch from one idea going on to the next, I want to try and make it as seamless as possible so that the listener doesn't detect quite what I'm doing or doesn't detect it as readily.
Thanks for watching today's mini lesson. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Drop any questions, comments, or suggestions for future videos down below. To watch our full-length events and participate in live Q&As with our presenting artists, head to jazzcomposerspresent.com. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.